Now it's on. Well, welcome back to another episode of Addiction Class recorded version. If you guys were on the outside right now, you might be watching or distracting yourself with a horrible Netflix series. And now I have this, hi, cool cats and kittens. When you get out and you watch that show, you'll know what I'm referring to. But today we're going to pick up with this idea of our brain, our sympathetic nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system, our dopamine system. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to look at our serotonin system. And people go like, is this a science class? Do I need 8th grade science? No, but a lot of times understanding what's going on inside of you and how these things fit together can help make it at least make a little bit of sense, where you go, oh, hey, I get it. Some of the reasons why I was doing this, how I got hooked into it, how I might get unhooked from it, how I can change things. So one of my favorite old sayings, and people in my family probably are sick of hearing it, but you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. So first we got to admit there's something going on if we're going to make a change to it. So we're going to continue with our idea of knowing what's going on with us and making change today. But first, you're like, really? Half-hour sessions? And first we're still going to have to do 5 deep breaths? Yeah, I think it's going to be good for all of us. So 5 deep breaths. Nice deep breath in. Hold at the top and then slowly release all that air. Another breath in. And out. And just try to follow your breath as it goes in and out. In. And out. If your little hamster starts running in that wheel, just label it. Thinking, hamster, in. And out. And then just go back to trying to be present right here and right now with your breath. And in. And out. So if you watched the video that we did yesterday, we did talk about your brain. Oh, and one thing I thought as we're going today, I ran across something I had written down before, which was this idea of that a lot of times addictions are weapons of mass distraction. Addictions as a distraction from what's real, what's present, what matters, what's happening right now, and what you can actually make changes in. So addiction often is an attempt. First, it's an attempt to get us out of something we don't want to feel, we don't want to experience, or to feel something different, to go to a different place, to fit in with our peers. And not in the sense, because we've talked about that before, not in the sense of just peer pressure. A lot of times it's not the peer pressure at all. It's like, hey, everyone's doing it, it looks like fun, those kinds of things. So there's lots of different reasons, but really addictions in all their forms, whether it's substance abuse addictions, behavioral addictions, they distract us. They distract us from that recovery, which is recovering who we really are. So we're going to keep going back to that, because that's one of those key points, that this is really about figuring out, who am I? What are my dreams, my goals, my purposes, and how do I get that? So, and if you guys were in class, I'm going to pretend you're here, someone says like, I know your goal is just to get us all, all sober, to get us to stop using drugs. And I always say, no, actually, I have a lot better job security. I need the t-shirt still. I have a lot better job security if everyone goes out there and uses and distracts and does all these things. What I would like for you to get, though, is not necessarily not using. But what I would like you to get is your purpose as a human being. And that's about meaning. Human beings are meaning makers, right? And this sense of, what's your purpose? What are your dreams? What are your choices? What are your options, and what do you want? And as long as something else is calling those shots, you're not doing, your part as a human being. So that's my little preachy moment for the day. Yesterday we talked about that idea that you have the brain stem, keeps you alive, nice for survival, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, all that good stuff. You've got the limbic system, that midbrain connects with all that. Emotions definitely get played in there, especially there's this place called the amygdala, and we're going to talk about that more today. Amygdala is your fear center. It also, and it's really red hot, or white hot actually, it's so hot it's white if you have a lot of anxiety going on, but that's that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn that we talked about yesterday, where that's like, hey, to keep alive, I got to do some of these really drastic things. Then you have your cortex, which is that thinking part of your brain. We share it with primates, but we have this nice human part up here, this meaning-making part, this forward-thinking part, this executive function part, this compassionate part, this impulse control part called your prefrontal cortex. So we went through those last time: brainstem, midbrain, cortex, prefrontal cortex, and how they all fit together. And again, if we will talk about this throughout, we will weave it throughout. So if you're like, that was really quick, I didn't get all that down, don't worry, that stuff will come back. But what we want to do is we want all those parts of our brain to function well together. It's not a situation where there's a good part of your brain and a bad part of your brain. It's not that your reptile brain, right? It's not that your reptile brain, your brainstem is bad. It keeps you alive. It's a good thing. A reptile brain, however, is horrible at managing relationships. Because what do reptiles do? Kill or be killed. And in fact, reptiles, unlike humans who have to have close personal bonds to live, because human infants can't live without care of other humans, so connection is hardwired into us as a necessity, reptiles, they hatch their young, and if there's no food, what do? Well, I can hatch another set of those little critters. They eat their young. So we want our reptile brain to keep us alive. We want the survival mechanisms, but we don't want that part controlling how we act in relationships. But if we're hurt, if we're damaged, if we don't know how to regulate our emotions, something gets triggered. And instead of our prefrontal cortex kicking in and helping us, use all these parts of our brain to come together to deal with the situation, to regulate the situation, to hold that internal boundary in place so that we decide what to do with those emotions, and then our actions flow from there. If without that part, sometimes we get triggered, reptile brain takes over, and we do stupid stuff that kill or be killed, that ends us up not where we want to be. So, and especially if you're using that in close relationships, it will destroy your close relationship. So it's not, and again, your emotional brain, if you just run on limbic system, just sheer emotion, well, that is really, really good when you're an infant. Emotions are the first language of infants. When you think about an infant, what do? If something's wrong, they cry. They let you know. And in fact, with an infant, their first cries are what we call undifferentiated. Same cry for everything. And you can't even tell if it's a boy baby or girl baby. If they tape infants crying, people can't tell. So the baby cries out, but then the baby and the caretakers enter this dance, right? And through interactions between the baby and the caretaker, pretty soon the infant learns even to have different cries. There's the hungry cry and the tired cry and the poopy cry, right? There's all that going on. And then as kids get to be around 2, we start saying to them, use your words. Use your words. So your kid's going, and we say, oh, what is it you want? Use your words. So that's what we're trying to do. After infancy, you're not meant to just let those emotions just run wild and everyone will just respond, because you're just not that cute anymore. So, after that, you have to learn how to ask for what you need and take care of some of what you need on your own and reach out for other people and all those kinds of things. So that's what we're talking about is this ability to really manage and have all those parts of the brain working together. Now, we talked about sympathetic nervous system being that one that revs you up for fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? This is survival mode. It revs everything up. The problem is that will also wear your body down. So you're only meant to go through those survival kind of stresses under genuine, immediate situations where there's risk of death. And there's very few of those in our lives. So it's really meant for those situations. What we're meant to have is just this really brief, boom, body activates, takes care of the danger, gets out of danger, kill or be killed, run or run away or whatever it is, deal with the danger, then you're out of it, then you're meant to go into parasympathetic response. That's we called it your tend and befriend system. You tend to relationships, you tend to your goals, you tend to your job, you tend to your work. You befriend people, you bond with people, you connect. You connect with yourself, right? You rest, you have relaxation, you digest your food. And feeling and healing is my part of that, feel and heal part of your part is in that relaxation. Like, I can feel these things and I can heal them, that they're not going to kill me, right? So that's that calm down system, and we'll talk more about how to activate that at the end. So we've got these compensatory systems, and we didn't talk about homeostasis yesterday. So homeostasis is this tendency for your brain, for your body, for your systems to go back to a balance, right? So it's like, if you get too hot, your body does things, it sweats, it does things to help you cool down. If you get too cold, it shivers, it changes like, how tight or loose your blood vessels are to try to warm you up, all those kinds of things. So humans like to exist in this range, this range of optimal functioning, which is homeostasis. Your brain likes that too. And your brain actually is a great pharmacy. It puts out all kinds of chemicals all the time. And the hard part is then what we do when we come in and we use other things, substances or addictions or whatever, we just go into that pharmacy and we just start with a sledgehammer messing things up, right? So it really whacks it out of homeostasis. And what we're going to talk about today is these two pathways in your brain, and it's simplifying it somewhat. So if you're all a bunch of neuroscientists, you can come up with a really good lecture and send it back to me when you have your own video camera on the outside, right? But we're going to talk today about this dopamine system and the serotonin system. And I'm less concerned that you know the names or the words than you know the concepts. So and there's a guy named Robert Lustig who has written some really good books, but one he wrote a couple years ago was called The Hacking of the American Mind. And I really like how he presents it. So even though a lot of people talk about this, I'm really going to use his work. So check out that book if you get a chance. I do have a copy in my lending library when I get back there. If it's not floating around out there and you can't find it, we'll try to get it in your hands. But here's one of the things. So your dopamine system is part of your survival system, and it's your seeking system. What your dopamine system does is it gives you little rewards, little boop, boop, little euphoric rewards when you seek stuff and get stuff, and it's when you get stuff that has to deal with survival. So you get little boost to this reward pathway, which we most commonly call the dopamine system, but you get boost to this reward system with things like when you eat a good meal, when you have sex, when you have companionship, right? When you accomplish a task, right? You have that moment of, oh, that feels good. And what it's meant to do is say to you, keep doing those things, right? You need to go get those things. So it says, go get food, go get companionship, go get sex, it's meant to keep you alive, right? So it's survival. But it's in small doses. It's meant to be well balanced in your brain. And as long as it's functioning normally, it's like, oh yeah, I get a little dopamine from this, get a little reward from that, and I can go along. What happens, the analogy that's used most often in addictions is addictions hijack that reward system. Because what they do is they hit that reward system with a huge amount of stimulant, and people go, well, but I took downers. Doesn't matter. It still hits that system, and it releases a whole bunch of dopamine at once, and it has those receptors all filled up, and it gives you, that's that whole, there's no high like the first high, because that first one's like, oh my God, instead of this little dose that's meant to happen, throughout the day or throughout the week, you just get this, boom, this hit of it. And people go, well, that feels great. So if it feels so great, why not just keep doing it, right? Darla, this feels great. I love it. When I first started using, nothing bad happened. And in fact, if I did a poll right now, if you guys were sitting in the room and I said, do you remember that ill-fated Just Say No campaign, which I think most of us realized was stupid right away? Well, what was the problem with that? Just say no, and then they would say, here's your brain on drugs, and I know you're all remembering that egg commercial, right? Well, here's the problem. First time you did something, first time you drank, did a drug, anything like that, what happened? Probably you just felt good, right? So this is your brain on drugs. Kids start to go, well, that's not true. That doesn't match my experience. This was fun. My life didn't fall apart. My teeth didn't fall out, all those kinds of things. Because what happens is that first time, your brain is, pretty pure, right? It hasn't had all this hit it at once. So this hits it at once, you feel great, and you think this is good. And you might go for a while before using again, and then you kind of get into this habit. But what starts to happen over time is that your brain sensing, because when your brain is out of homeostasis, when so much is put in so quickly, what starts to happen is your brain goes, holy crap, I'm in trouble here. Because your neurons are tender little things, right? They're not like these hardy little, Terminator type things that just can endure everything. They're tender little things. And what they realize is if it keeps getting that overstimulation, it will kill those neurons. Well, your neurons don't want to die. I mean, they're part of your brain. They communicate. They help all those things happen in your brain. So they're kind of like, this guy's trying to kill me, right? So what they do is those neurons become protective of themselves. So they start to do things like what we call downregulation, meaning they kind of turn away. So they're like, the drugs can't attach to them the same way. They're like, oh man, we got to hunker down here. We got to protect ourselves because that guy is sending in, or that girl is sending in all that crap. We got to try to protect ourselves to live another day. So when they downregulate, when they turn away, when they become less responsive, that's a situation that most people know pretty well, and that's called tolerance. Like, how come I don't get high on the same amount I used to get high on? Well, because your neurons have tried to protect themselves. And that's a good thing, because for most of you sitting in this room, your neurons are damaged but not dead. Because if you kill the neurons, they're dead, right? Now you can lose a fair number of neurons. People have strokes and their brain it's not that part ever comes back. Their brain reworks it and other neurons take on other functions. You can make up for it for a while, but eventually the system will shut down. And some of you have heard me tell this story about when I was younger and I was poor and I had this car and I had this I don't remember if he was my boyfriend or fiance at the time. He's my husband now, but my car all of a sudden just stopped one day. It wouldn't work, and it was an electrical short. Well, he hates doing electrical work. He's fabulous at mechanics and all of that. I mean, he put a whole new engine in my car, so this guy knows what he's doing. But the electrical stuff, you know how crazy that gets. So I just have to have this car running. So he hot-wired it for me, and it ran. Until a while later, something else broke down. So he kept hot-wiring it for me until it was a miraculous feat of electronics that this car still ran, until it finally collapsed and then had to redo the whole thing. And it actually ended up being like a little switch in just the turn signal. But that's kind of what your brain does. Your brain will try to function for a while. It'll try to rewire, and then eventually it will really not be able to function anymore at the same rate. So that's the thing with your neurons becoming neuroprotective like that. They downregulate. Here's the thing. So when your brain says, I'm going to protect myself, well, your neurons are like, I'm going to protect myself, and I'm going to turn away so that I can't pick up as much of these drugs, and that way I can protect myself, and then eventually, if he or she doesn't use anymore, then I'll come back and I'll be myself again. But what do most people do? Oh, well, this isn't working anymore. So we're Americans, so what do? If it's not working, we intensify it, right? So if it's not working, we do more of it. Or some people are like, it's not working, I'll add something to it. Other times people go, well, it's not working anymore. I've built up this tolerance. Let me change delivery methods. So it might be, first I was smoking it, then I'm snorting it, then I'm shooting it, then I'm, so it might, whatever those combinations of things may be that you try to keep overriding the system. But that's what we mean by the system becomes hijacked. Because once you remove the addiction, and all these little receptors have downregulated and your reward pathway has totally gotten out of balance, then how do you feel? You don't feel normal. In fact, you often feel really, really, really bad. And then it becomes, well, now I need my addiction just to feel somewhat functional, just to feel somewhat normal. So that's that part of hijacking. And then you go, well, okay, so I get that. and now I'm in jail, and I've decided, maybe you've decided, well, I'm in jail, so I'm not, I hope you're not using in here, please, 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 but we know it happens. Not using in here, maybe I'll try not using, but what do I do to make my reward pathway feel better, because I feel like crap? Bad news. You have to give it time to heal. Now we're going to talk about some things that help later on, but part of it is your dopamine system, your reward pathway, your neurons, unless they've been killed, they will heal, but it takes time. And as it's healing, which usually, now here's the thing, we used to say to people, give it a year. And for most substances, a year is really the big time period. Then we realized opiates often take longer, because people be like, I've been off for a year and I just don't feel pleasure in anything. I don't feel, it's just, And for opiates, it often can take a year and a half, 2 years. The thing is, there are usually moments of it getting better, because the healing process with that is also not, people want to think kind of it gets better and better every day, right? Like, I'll try to do it so that it makes sense the way you're watching this video. So it's like, I start here and then just every day it gets a little better and a little better and a little better. But that's not how your brain heals. When you think about it, if you've ever had an injury, that's not usually how injuries heal. You think you're getting better, and then it gets worse for a while. Then you think you're getting better. So it heals in these fits and starts, like, and I like to compare it to a lawnmower. An old lawnmower, it's been sitting in the garage, right? And so now it's getting to be spring out there, you're going to mow the grass, and you go to start it up, and you're like, you're pulling on that, that chain on that lawnmower, and it's like it doesn't want to start, it doesn't want to start, it doesn't want to start, and you maybe adjust it, the air, the oil, the gas, that whole mixture, right? You finally get it to start, and it's like, it starts, you're like, yay, it starts, and then it dies. That's kind of how your dopamine system is when it's healing. It starts to heal, oh yay, it's getting better, and then it'll crash. And then you keep trying again, do some adjustments, right? It works and it crashes again. So and then we call this post-acute withdrawal syndrome. During that post-acute withdrawal phase, you're going to have those fits and starts of that lawnmower. And a lot of times people then go, I'm crazy. And here's the really terrible part about this hijacker for your brain. Because remember, what's the function of your healthy brain? Keep the organism alive. And when your brain gets hijacked, what's the function of your hijacked brain? Keep the addiction alive, even if it kills the host, right? So here's the problem. When you're going along, you think, oh, it's getting better, and then you have that post-acute withdrawal phase where all of a sudden you wake up, and maybe yesterday you could do simple calculations or even complex calculations. You could do your job. You could remember things. You could get through the day. You thought things were getting better. Maybe all of a sudden you wake up and you're in brain fog. You can't add 2 and 2. You can't remember crap. You suddenly, things that you do all the time, you're like, what is it? I can't do this. And you start to feel a little hopeless. And then that little hijacker starts whispering in your ear, right? And what does the hijacker say? It says, you know what would make you feel better? You know what would work? You know what would take the edge off? Just do a little bit. Not a lot. Don't go all crazy now, right? Just do a little. And when that happens, if you do a little, you will temporarily feel a little better again, because you've gotten that, you've kind of, smacked around that dopamine system and gotten it to release a little dopamine again, or you've added stuff from the outside. So you have a little bit of it again. But again, it won't be happy with that little bit and say, okay, now that we had a little bit, and it takes your healing of those neurons back to ground zero. So now I got to start to heal those neurons again, which I've just started. They've just started to feel a little safe. Like turning their little faces toward the sun again, like, oh, maybe it's safe to go out there again. And like I said, you want your neurons to self-protect like that, because when your neurons die, your brain dies. When your brain dies, it's not a good situation. So we want to work with this, knowing that you're going to have those post-acute withdrawal times. So if you know that, one thing you can do is, you're going to hate this. You guys are really going to hate this. Write things down. Journal, right? Write things down, even if it's just short journaling, because what you'll realize if you start to notice this throughout your healing process, I was doing really good for a while, and then I woke up one day and I just felt like crap again. And I was foggy and I was hopeless and all that. And then I just kept getting through it and I kept doing things. And you might have to do adaptive things during those days. So if it's one of those, it's a brain fog day and you can't remember stuff, you're going to get good at writing things down. If you can't do simple calculations, you may have to ask someone to double check your math if your job involves math, or use a calculator. If it's, that you're feeling depressed, you're going to have to do all those things could help with depression in the short run, including short-term distractions, including, if possible, getting some exercise, including mindfulness time, including reading something good, including repeating a chant of something that you like. So that's one of those things, I have to check my time here, that you might have to start doing to help deal with those post-acute withdrawal symptoms. So that's that dopamine side. Now, we've only got about 4 minutes left on that, so that's that side. The other part of your brain, and that's also what we call the gratification side of your brain. So remember, gratification, that's like that get it, get it, get it, get it side. Then you've got the contentment, enjoyment, satisfaction side. This is your serotonin system, different than dopamine, but it uses a lot of the same building blocks. So the problem is, if you're using all your building blocks, right, on the dopamine side, you're robbing your serotonin side. And your serotonin side is the side that can actually let you enjoy life, feel satisfaction with life, feel contentment with life, feel that joy. And that's the joy that's not that get it, get it, get it, and the minute you have it, you're waiting for the next one. It's the kind that you can think back on something you've done really well, and you can remember that and feel good about it, even on your deathbed. So that's the serotonin system. So that gratification part of your brain, here's 7 characteristics of that. One is it's short-lived. It's a seeking system, not a keeping system. So you can't keep those emotions. You can't keep that feeling of well-being. It's visceral, meaning it's felt in your body. It's a very visceral experience. It's a taking thing. When you keep activating that dopamine system, what dopamine says is, what can I get? What's in it for me? It's take, 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 want, 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 seek, seek, seek kind of things. Your dopamine system is really experienced alone. It's that survival piece. It's really about disconnection. Dopamine says, make me happy and make me happy now, right? It doesn't say what's going to make me happy in the long run. Dopamine activation, reward system activation, that gratification system is achievable with substances. Now, most of us know that, right? Extremes of, kind of triggering this reward system absolutely can lead to addiction. And that's true whether it's a substance, a chemical addiction, or whether it's a behavioral addiction. And it deals mostly with the dopamine, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter. And excitatory, we don't mean like, you act all crazy. We mean what it does to the neurons, right? Making them fire more or less. Now, on the other side, your serotonin system. And remember, serotonin has a lot to do with depression. So the SSRIs, the most commonly prescribed antidepressants, actually help the serotonin stay floating around in your system more, because when you have more serotonin in there, it helps you feel less depressed. There are also other ways you can build up that serotonin. But anytime you're overstoking the dopamine system, you are robbing from the serotonin system. That is why chronic use of addictions to deal with things will lead to depression, right? And then you try to treat the depression with the addiction, and you're in that loop. So things about the serotonin system, one is it's long-lived. You can feel good about those things. Like I said, you can remember an accomplishment and feel good about it. It has more of an ethereal quality. That's meaning it's a bigger quality. It has more meaning. Some people it's spiritual, whatever it is, but it has a bigger meaning behind it. It's a giving thing. You actually get more serotonin when you give, when you connect. And serotonin is experienced with others in that state of connection. So connected to yourself, connected to others. You cannot achieve that with just substances alone. Now people go, I take antidepressants. They help, but again, you will get your brain deprived of serotonin again if you don't do the things that keep it going. And even if you're on chemical antidepressants, you might be able to go off of them, and your brain will take over and keep your serotonin levels high if you do the things that support that system. So antidepressants are something that you might not have to be on for life. And again, we'll talk about that in another unit on depression. Your serotonin system, serotonin is not addictive. So it doesn't have that same get it, gotta have it, that driven quality. And you can have a lot of serotonin throughout your lifetime. Now there is a thing called, serotonin storm. You can have that, and but unless you're taking outside meds, that's really not going to happen in your normal levels of your brain. So we're talking about that normal serotonin. And it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which just means that it doesn't like overactivate those neurons all the time, so it doesn't wear them down in the same way. So that is a lot about your neurons today, a lot about your brain, and we got through pause. I did want to stop with one more quote for today. I've got to find it here since I'm running out of time. Stop giving yourself permission to be less than who you are. Thanks, see you soon.